Hey everybody, welcome to Allison Unfiltered. Oh my gosh, I have Crystal here today with us, and I I'm so excited for her to share her story with you guys that like when she tells you her story, your jaw is going to be on the floor. So make sure that you have time to listen to this because it's too good to miss. Crystal and I met just online. I've followed her, I've watched her story, and I've just been like, oh my gosh, this girl, she's got to tell her story. Like this is crazy town, right? So, how are you today, Crystal?
I am doing so good. Excited to be here.
Good. Good, good, good. So, you have had such an incredible story of I almost want to say like overcoming. I think that's one of the yeah, that's the word that keeps coming to my head is this girl has overcome some shit in her life, right? Like big time. Um, I'll drop bad words, so you can drop some bad words if you do. If you don't, I just try to avoid the f bomb, and of course I don't ever say GD, but the f bomb can. Yeah, never,
Sometimes,
never.
it is necessary to prove a point, but we'll just.
Yeah, it did. My husband scared me one time, and it came out of my mouth as I slapped his face. Bathroom one time, but
It'd be like that sometimes. It just be like that sometimes.
it does. It
Try to
does. You
avoid
can't
it,
help
but
it. Yeah, yeah, sometimes. I mean, it's terrible, but man. So, thank you for being here and thank you for being brave and sharing your story. And so I'm going to just let you jump right in. So back it up to and and let me preface this. Crystal is a successful, productive member of society now who has contributed a lot to the world to help other people too. So, the purpose of this is for you to see that even when you're in rock bottom, God can always bring you back and he has a plan for you. Whatever you're struggling through, there's a lesson to be learned in it, you know? And some of us learn really, really hard lessons because we're really, really stubborn and we don't reach out to him when we should. So just back it up, Crystal. Just talk about, things that you went through. Just, tell us your story. Tell us what.
okay, we are just we're gonna. I like to be real awkward, so we're just gonna jump right in from the very beginning. So, whenever I was growing up, both of my parents were drug addicts and alcoholics. They had me whenever they were like 14 and 15. Um, they That's how I got my name. They were addicted to crystal meth, and that was their favorite thing. You think that, that moment as a kid where you're like, oh, how did you come up with my name? Well, my parents' response was crystal meth. That was our favorite. We named you that. We couldn't give you our middle name, the middle name meth. That would have been obvious. So, Crystal, I gave you my middle name Kay. And I was like, talk about a generational curse. Here we go. Okay. I lived with my grandparents for the first couple of years of my life. They were alcoholics at the time, and so they left me with babysitters after babysitters after babysitters. After a couple real bad ones and locked in the closet stories, we landed on one. Her name was Sandra. I call her my nanny to this day. I just lost her a couple years ago, which I lost a big part of my heart. However, this woman was a God fearing woman. She placed me, at the time I was out in Johnson County. She placed me at the Heights. I grew up there. Just God was being instilled. And the Bible says that if you put the word of God in your child, they'll come back to it. And I stand on it from my own I'll stand on it. So she
Yeah.
instilled the word of God in me from a kid. I was probably about 3, 4 years old whenever her ex-husband started sexually assaulting me. He would hold me at gunpoint and do whatever he wanted all the time. Now keep in mind my grandparents were alcoholics, so they were gone. I pretty much lived with my nanny. She would plan family vacations and she would have a ticket for me. So that's how much I was with her, because my grandparents, not intentional, they were just in their own disease, and they didn't realize that it was a disease, because back then alcoholism wasn't just, it wasn't identified as a disease. It was only, and neither was drugs. So none of that. It was just, oh, you're a piece of crap or whatever. And so they were alcoholics, and I lived with nanny for a lot. So for 9 years I was held at gunpoint, sexually assaulted. I was molested, raped, and eventually sodomized. Um, I think whenever I was about 12, my real mom came into the picture, and she started wanting visitation. Well, as a kid, you always have this instinctive, like, bond. I don't know how to explain it. Like, you need this validation from your real parents. It doesn't matter what they were or who they were. There's just this thing inside of us that we need that validation. So whenever she came around one night, I ended up telling her all about the sexual assault. So she went and she turned him in. He went to jail. He actually admitted to more than I knew about. He had stuck rusted objects inside of me, mutilated my female organs, to the point where I was never supposed to have kids. All that thought, but God. I'll come back to it though. But my relationship with my real mom started growing then, and she was here in East Texas. I got splattered all over the newspaper. And like, my grandparents are old school. Like, whatever happens in the house stays in the house. You don't get help for it. You don't talk about it. We don't tell people. It's just this dirty little secret elephant in the room that nobody talks about. And so whenever I got splattered all over the newspaper, um,
Because he went to prison,
because
right?
he got two life sentences, because he admitted he pled guilty, and he told them about more than I even realized, because apparently my therapist said that whenever you go through trauma like that, you can actually, it's called displacement. Your mind, in order to deal with it, it displaces itself in a whole nother, like, it's blocked out, like it didn't happen. Um,
Yeah.
so he admitted to it. He got two life sentences. He actually died in prison. And so once I got splattered all over the newspaper, my grandparents was like, "Meh, go, you got to go." And so I got shipped up here to East Texas. I started going to school in Van, my eighth grade year. Um, Man, it was real hard. If I'm being 100% honest, it didn't get any better while I was up here, because my mom had a car accident. She broke all of her ribs on her right side, her 4, 5, 6 lumbar vertebrae, and became a heavy pill addict. And so
Now, was your mom clean at this point whenever you yeah, so whenever you came to live with her in 8th grade, I'm just trying to, like, get, like, the whole picture. Like,
I
you
I had this misconception that she had her life together because she had a brick house on 5 acres in Edom. At the time, if I'm being honest, I had this misconception that she had gotten her life together. But after a year of being there and accidentally walking in on her with a strap on her arm and shooting up meth, I was like, oh, oh, no. She
yeah.
obviously, so I had the misconception that she did, because some people think that just because you have a house and a family that you're okay. But
'Cause she was paying her bills,
yeah,
right?
she was
Yeah.
paying her bills, so she was,
Yeah.
she was
She
fine.
was a functioning addict.
Yes, 100%. And then until she had that car accident and got strung out on pills. And I remember going to three different doctors. We had a doctor in Tyler, we had a doctor in Chandler, we had a doctor in somewhere else where she was getting Oxycontin. And it was before they came up with the, now they have Smart Cotton, which is like 40 milligrams and it's time released. Then they just gave her straight 80 milligrams. So she had three different doctors feeding her unlimited, because they didn't have the computer systems like they have now. And it got real bad. She ended up overdosing. We got on the school bus one day, went to school. Her and I had an argument, so she sent me some flowers up to school, some yellow roses. That was our thing. It stood for friendship because obviously she wasn't really my mother. She was more like my friend. And got off the bus. She was gone. My sister walked in and found her dead, and I was there shortly after. I stayed there until the coroner carried her out because I couldn't believe it. Whenever you actually find someone dead, like so, whenever you touch somebody, they can be cold, but eventually you feel some warmth in there. But whenever you touch somebody that's dead, it's cold to their bone. And she had been laying face down for 8 hours, so she was swollen and purple and blue. She did not look anything like my mother. My mother was a beautiful woman. And so in my mind, I thought this was all a prank. I thought this was a sick prank because this did not look like my mom. How can someone be here 1 minute, gone the next, like that? How? You know? And so with that being said, I got real lost. I got real lost. A lot of people want to talk about.
How old were you? How old were you?
So that was
Does
January.
that still eighth grade?
No, so that was January 15th of 2002. So I was 16, about to turn 17.
So you were like sophomore
I was a
in high
junior.
school?
I think I was a junior because I graduated in 2003. Um, so I was a junior,
Okay.
16, about to turn 17 in May. Um, whenever that happened.
And and where was your dad in all of this?
My real dad was in Arlington. He was a severe alcoholic. He was apparently already diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. However, he never really believed that I was his, and so he didn't
Okay.
have much to do with me.
He wasn't in the picture at all.
No, no, not until later on. He ended up like, which I'll talk about later. But out of nowhere, after I got out of prison, I had a chaplain at my doorstep talking about your dad wants to make amends. And so I did get like a year and a half with him later on. But at this point in my life,
Yeah.
I had no idea who he was. I didn't know anything about him except he didn't believe that I was here. So,
Okay.
um, you know, I had already been, I was 16, 17, and I've never at that point experienced any kind of peace. I never had any childhood. I was 3 years old whenever a 66-year-old man started inappropriately have touching me. Um, I battled with my whole family having drug addictions and alcohol addictions. I had already battled with everybody leaving in my life. I didn't know how to cope with anything. All I knew was I just everything inside me was broken. And so I had the brainiac idea that hey, I was named after crystal meth. Let's see what's so great about it. Well,
Oh shit, and that's the scariest thing too. And we talked about this the other day. Is like I tell you, and you know, you too. I've told my kids like addiction runs rampant on both sides of your family. Like you don't know what your body's gonna hook itself to when you try it. So the best thing to do is just not even try it. I mean, I was 19 before I ever even touched cocaine, and that was it. That was all it took was that one time,
and you
and I
could
was
just feel
done.
your soul leaving your body. Like I've told my daughter, I'm like,
Yeah,
you have a
totally.
predisposition. You are predisposed to be a drug addict and alcoholic and end up in prison like your entire family. You cannot touch it. You cannot touch it. Unfortunately, Alyssa watched me. My daughter, her name is Alyssa. Unfortunately, she had to watch me be handcuffed. She watched me do prison time. Had to see all of that as a kid. But I'm thanking Jesus right now that I broke that generational curse, that I went through all the pain that needed to be taken because she won't touch drugs. She won't touch them.
And my kids are the same
No.
way. My kids are the exact same way. They will not touch it. Even my 19-year-old thinks prohibition should be legal. He thinks that people shouldn't even be allowed to drink because it's mind
Agree.
altering if you abuse it, and a majority of the people abuse
Agree.
it. Right? There's a majority that abuses it. So And he grew up with his dad. Oh my gosh, I remember him telling me he woke up in the middle of the night and his dad was so drunk he was standing in the kitchen floor peeing in the kitchen floor of their house. And I was like those are things you can do that for a kid, right? I mean, that's not as severe as what you went through, but for him in that moment, that was pretty traumatizing. And he's just been against it from day one because he sees what it's done to his family. All right, so you talk about it being a generational curse, like crystal meth being a generational curse, and you wanted to try it. Like, that's scary.
It is scary, but
You knew what was coming.
it's a real thing. I believe that generational curses are a real thing. And
Hmm.
I just all of a sudden, after finding my mom dead and seeing the coroner take her out, like all of a sudden I was like, I have to see what meth is all about, because that's what my parents chose over me. Like it was just like this overwhelming urge inside. And that's why I truly feel it was a generational curse. And so I set out, baby, you know that if you go looking for something, you're going to find it. And I found it. And it took a hold of my soul instantly. Instantly. And I'm going to preface this and say, I tried every drug along the way to find meth. Like I wasn't just out looking for meth. I was like, hey, what you got? I'm doing it all. Like, cause I'm feeling some type of way. I have never had a life. I have been traumatized since the day that I was born. And I, I was broken. I was so broken. And I want to also say this, that it's easy for people to point out or point their finger at a drug addict or alcoholic, but they don't understand that drugs and alcohol are nothing but a symptom of the real issue. We don't search out to become a drug addict and sell our whole life for crack or for meth or for cocaine. We don't, we're hurting. And it's because we're empty because we need Jesus, but we don't know that at the time. So I I got out
There it is. Can you repeat that one more time, just so the people in the back can hear that real loud and clear?
99.99999% of the time we are searching for something to fill this emptiness and brokenness. And we don't know what it is, but it's God. It is God 100%. And it's God. And you'll know that. You'll know that I'm telling the truth whenever you find Him in a real, tangible, audible way. Unfortunately, I had to find Him that way in prison after my fourth felony, acting a fool. But that's it. It's 100%. It's 100%. And I honestly feel like had my nanny not poured into me as a child, where put that little seed in there and kind of watered it, I wouldn't have known to go back to it. So
No, and it's crazy. You talk about her and it was her husband that sexually abused you
she
and
had no
you were pretty
idea.
much living with her and she had no idea and she's this God-fearing woman and she had no idea the devil was in her home.
She had no idea.
And I bet she was
Oh,
mortified
she was
when
sick.
she found out.
She was sick. My nanny was literally physically sick whenever everything happened. She was sick. Um for many years afterwards. In fact, she never tried to date again. She never tried to be with anyone again. She moved out of Johnson County, was out Arlington, and I stayed close with her. In fact, I ended up finding her dead um, from congested heart failure and COPD a couple of years later.
Oh my God, girl.
Yes, overcomer. I have.
Yeah, I mean, that's like what I keep seeing in my mind when I think about you and your story, I just keep hearing like she's an overcomer, like total overcomer. Like it's just, I mean, it's just crazy what I keep hearing in my mind about you.
You know, I'm all about being raw and real, and that's why you're going to see some emotion right here. Is I have been through things that most people will never be able to comprehend. Whenever most toddlers are learning how to walk, I'm being sexually assaulted and held at gunpoint. While most people are graduating high school, I'm finding my mom dead. It has been one thing after another. I ended up in I caught my first felony whenever I was 17, hauling 25 pounds of weed across the border from Mexico. Went to Mexican jail. Well, let me-
Y'all, I told y'all your draw was going to drop, right? Here we go. I mean, as if the last 17 years hadn't been enough. Let's get into the next
yeah.
17 years. I mean, holy
And that
shit,
only puts us at
right?
28, and I'm about to turn 38. So, so yeah. So technically, I was on the U.S. side in prison. However, I could look out my jail cell and see the Mexican border. Let me tell y'all something. Don't don't go to jail that close. I've never I don't even know how to explain it. Like there was green, excuse my language, there was green shit growing up the wall like a fungus inside my jail cell. There was no mat. You know, here in the United States, like you at least get a mat. I mean, it's shitty mat, but you get a mat. No pillow, steel. They brought me this orange drink that I think was supposed to be orange Kool-Aid, but it was just flavored water, maybe with some it had the, like this copper I can't even ex- explain the taste of it. It was just like I'd rather dehydrate completely than drink this. And then the food the food looked like have you ever weaned a puppy where you take puppy food and you add warm water and you kind of mush it up? That's what my food looked like.
Oh my god.
And then I would
And
get,
how
don't take this the wrong way, but I would get so excited if I saw a Caucasian person, a white person, because I was like, oh, somebody's going to speak English. Nope. Nope. I'd be like, hi, how are you?
no habla español.
They're like, Beachy gringa. Like, that's the response I got. It's
So how long were you in the Mexican jail? How long were you
for
there?
2 weeks because I was terrified to call my grandfather. So my grandparents ended up adopting me later on, but I was terrified to call them and tell them that I was in Mexican jail. Well, they knew who I left with, and they called them. Well, all of them were home because I took the full rap for everything because all of them had priors, and here I am, naive. I'm going to be a ride or die gangster. Took a third-degree felony for uh, four or three other people, and so whenever he got a hold of them, he was like, "You mean to tell me she took the rap for you? You're home and she's there?" I don't know
Wow.
how that conversation went. All I know is that I was bonded out very, very quickly after. Um, Things were happening in the background with people. I need to be careful what I say there. Um, I ended up getting 2 years probation. They told me the
Okay.
judge looked at me and said, "You're a little fish. We want the big fish. Swim on." And I said, "In my town, I'm a hero. Like little fish, but I'll take it. Whatever." You know, and so,
You're the hero because you took the fall.
well, no, I was a hero because nobody in Johnson County had ever been caught with 25 pounds of weed. Like, I'm like, a little fish? What do you mean? Like, I'm a whole whale, okay? Like, whenever you're
That's
younger, you're
hilarious.
trying to just like,
I mean, it's not funny,
it
right?
is
It's not
though.
funny, but it's funny. Like I get it.
Whenever we're lost, we're just trying to find our niche. You know what I mean? And we're thinking, oh well,
Yeah.
in this crowd, if I'm a big fish, then maybe this is my niche. But God had plans for me. He still had me covered. I was mad as hell at God. Mad as hell because my nanny grew me up talking about how he loved me and he was this great person. And I had experienced nothing but hell on earth for 20 years. Long story short, I was still doing meth, ended up getting a couple more felonies for meth. My final one was in 2013. I got possession with intent to deliver, um, less than 4 grams. I pled guilty for a 4-year sentence in prison. Baby, let me tell you, nobody could save me. That was my rock bottom. Is that before I had people trying to save me, I had people bonding me out, I had people putting commissary on, I had people writing, I had visitors, I had all that thing, and now people were tired of my shit. I had nobody but God. And sometimes God loves you so much that He's going to do this. He's going to cut off all your supply to everything and everything else. And you're going to see me. You're going to hear me. You're going to know me. I cannot tell you how I made it through prison 2.5 years because I'm not an ugly girl. Okay. Pretty girls get cut up as soon as they walk in. You learn how to put a razor blade underneath your tongue. You break them apart. You carry them. You walk, talk, fit, chew, eat everything with razor blades. You get cut up if you are pretty. Period. In discussion. Nothing but the grace of God protected me for 2.5 years. I've seen.
I would never make it in prison.
You say that,
I
but
would
baby, look.
never.
Whenever it's your only, whenever you don't have an option, you do. You do.
Mm. I yeah. I mean, I'm just grateful I never got caught with the drugs that I ran. I never got caught, and that's and I don't.
I'm,
I just didn't.
I'm so grateful that I did because I'll never forget. In fact, I'll never forget. I was reading The Shack. I was reading that book,
Great, great book.
The Shack,
Yeah.
and it's talking about the judgment part. And he's like, "How could you let this happen to my little girl?" And she comes in and she says, "They're all God's children. They are all God's children. He loves them all the same, no matter what they've done. Just because He loves them doesn't mean He doesn't love you." And I can't tell you, it hit me right then. And I heard God audibly say, "Crystal, I have loved you since you were born. And
Mm.
all of this pain that you have felt, there is going to be a purpose in it. And I know that doesn't seem fair, but whenever you see that purpose, Crystal, all will be well with your soul." And as I've come out and as I've done ministry and as as I've seen grown men cry and people change and been able to minister or be a big sister or a big friend or help be a supporter. I don't really I don't do like AA. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but I am a Christian. I'm Christian based, it's not someone who I believe to be a higher power. It's God. It's God Almighty. It's the Bible for me. So I don't call myself like a what do they call 'em? An AA. What do they call 'em?
I don't know.
In AA and NA, you have a someone that you go to,
A
a
sponsor.
sponsor. So I don't sponsor people, but I'm
Gotcha.
there. I will walk through things with them. But every time that I've seen something transition or I've seen the light click in somebody's eyes where they're like, this woman has been literally in the pits of hell, and she
Yeah.
literally now, just to skip forward, I'll turn 38 May 29th. In the last 2 years, I moved away from Johnson County. I got into sales and finance. I have literally made every tangible dream come true because God promises us restoration. And He doesn't just promise us restoration, He promises us sevenfold in all areas. And I'm living proof. I built my own custom home from top to bottom by myself with no man, no parents, no nothing. God, my cars, everything that I have, I have walked in the Holy Lands. I was baptized in the Jordan River, the same river that Jesus Christ was born. Everybody told me I couldn't
Mm.
do it, and I did because but God. There is no limitations on what can God do. But here's the key is that God knows your heart. Not the actions that you show everybody else. He knows your heart. He knows your intention. He sees, and it says, whatever is in the dark will come out to the light. So He knows. He saw me on my knees crying and begging, please, God, I don't know what I'm doing and I don't understand, but I trust you. During my divorce, I was married and I went through awful marriage. He became very abusive, very controlling, very psychologically. He told the counselor, he said, she's such a strong woman. He said that I wake up and I just want to hurt her. I want to beat her down because I get high whenever I can make her cry.
Wow.
I left out of there.
There's a special place in hell for
Oh,
him.
yeah. I left him 3 years ago. Started off with a travel trailer. I left everything to him. My church helped me buy a travel trailer. I paid $1,000 for it. It was 5,000. 2.5 years later, I'm here on 2 acres of land on a custom built home. Spoiled, rotten dogs. I just bought my dream car, a Tesla. I pay all my bills by myself. In fact, I'm able to pay my mom's bills and help my family, and that's God. That is God, because he saw me on my knees the last 10 years. I've been trying to get clean. I've been clean for 10 years, so He's seen me, and he's heard my cries, and he's seen what I've done behind the, whenever someone didn't have something close to me, and I here, just take this. God knew that. They didn't know that. Nobody else knew that, but God did. And I truly believe that that's why I am where I am, is because
I have no doubt. And I mean, you have such a powerful story. I want to ask you to tell a little bit about what happened with your pregnancy with Alyssa. We skipped over that, so I think that's a really powerful story.
so due to the sexual assault, he had stuck rusted objects inside of me and mutilated my female organs. I had what was called a septated uterus, so my uterus was almost cut in half. Um, I had seen 5 different specialists. They said that I would never be able to carry a kid. I could probably get pregnant, but I could never carry past 3, 4 months. So I ended up getting pregnant. Now I was on meth, strung out on meth. I wasn't leaving my friend meth. We were buddies. Um, I had no signs that I was pregnant. I still had a period. I had no morning sickness, nothing. I wake up one day at a friend's house, finally went to sleep after, being strung out for probably a week or two. I wake up and I think I'm hallucinating, because it happens whenever you're on meth for a couple weeks and don't sleep. I wake up and I think I'm hallucinating. I just see my belly just kind of moving. And I'm like, yo. And I said her name. I said, hey, come here, come here. I was like, man, I think I got a bad case of gas. I know that sounds awful, but that's really what I thought. Okay.
No, it's
I mean,
true.
I was like, man, I got some serious gas. Like, look at this. And you could see like movement. And she's like,
Well, I'm sure you were so skinny too that you couldn't.
87 pounds,
Shit.
87 pounds. And I'm 5'6", 5'5.5", 5'6". So you do the math. And so right now I'm a solid 145.
Wow.
And so she was like, Crystal, that's not okay. That's not okay. Took me to the hospital. I was 16 weeks pregnant. My first sonogram, they could tell that it was a little girl. And I said, I think maybe it's just not developed like its daddy. It's definitely going to be a boy. They didn't think it was too funny, but I kept doing meth because everybody had told me that I wasn't going to be able to have this kid. Everybody had told me it was physically impossible for me to have a child. So I think it was 6, almost 7 months. I got busted in a drug house, in a meth house. It got raided, and I was in there, and the sheriff at the time, um, he was like, "What are you doing?" Because I'm pregnant, and I'm like, "Doesn't matter. I'm going to lose the baby at any time. I'm going to lose the baby anytime. They've already told me I can't have the baby, so I'm not getting attached to it. I'm not doing anything. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just chunky, I'm just overweight, and that's really, I had detached my mind from this because I was so convinced, because I saw the doctors. I watched the medical. I personally went through all these tests. I knew what had been said to me, not from one doctor, but from 5 of the top specialists in Texas. I knew, you know? And so I'm not getting emotionally attached to this and then losing something else, because I've lost everything else in my
Right.
life.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" I was like, "I have to go pee." So they escort me in there. Of course, during a drug bust, nobody can be alone in case somebody's trying to pass off drugs. And I go to pee and there's blood. And I said, "See, I told you." He said, "Crystal, you're gonna have to. You have consequences for being here, and you have consequences for your actions." He said, "But right now, that baby comes first." He took me up there to the hospital. They
Wait, tell me what you said about him though. That about him and his
Oh,
wife.
so he was not able to have kids. And he and his wife actually adopted a little girl from China who's, get this, a week apart from Alyssa's birthday. I mean, they were a week or 2 weeks apart as far as their birthdays. So he was, and I didn't
So
know
he's watching this girl throw away this pregnancy that they would kill to
that
have.
they are paying all this money because they had already started the process. I didn't know that.
Right,
You know what I mean? And so he's watching
right.
this. He's like, no. And he's a Christian man. Him and his wife are both God fearing, wonderful people. And I'm lost. And so he puts me in the truck. And on the way there, he's like, Crystal, I'm praying right now. And I was like, it doesn't matter. I said, everybody's been praying for me my whole life. It ain't changed nothing. And I just start bawling in the truck, right? And I'm like, I've been raped, sodomized, beaten, passed off, like, and I'm telling him my story. And he was like, I have never in my entire career of 30 something years stopped in the middle of an arrest. He said, but God told me to protect you. He said, so I'm taking you to the hospital. He said, I'm taking you to the hospital. We're going to get you looked.
Isn't it chills?
I have his picture hanging up in my living room right now. Him and my daughter, him and my daughter, still this day. I have his picture, and and he'll, if he ever sees this, he'll tell you, he'll stand up and tell you everything I'm saying, because he's asked me to speak and tell my story at the Christians Business Club there in Cleveland, and he asked me specifically to tell this part, to tell the whole truth, to really touch people. So um we got there,
Yeah.
he told me, he said, Crystal, you're going to have this baby, and after you have this baby, he said, you better be clean because I'm gonna have you both drug tested. He said, if you're clean, he said, I'm gonna make sure that the baby stays with you. He said, if you're not clean, I'm gonna get CPS involved. He said, we'll discuss what's gonna happen from this bust. Then he said, you are gonna have consequences from these actions. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go up there, get checked out. The baby is fine. The bleeding is just some sporadic bleeding that just happened. We know what happened. God intervened right there to connect everything. I stayed clean. I was bedridden for 4 months. I had Alyssa. She was 8 pounds, 3.9 ounces, and 20 and 3/4 inches long. She was 2 weeks overdue. Her face was so fat, she looked like a little Eskimo baby. Um, him and his wife came up there to visit her, and they came and visited me every single week after I had her to make sure I was clean, which I was. Um, 4 months, well, it was about a month after I had her, he had me arraigned for the charge, which was possession. He gave me a walkthrough bond of $1,000, so I paid $100, and so that way I could be at home. I got sentenced to Safe P, which is like a prison ran rehabilitation, um, and normally you have to wait your 3 months to catch that chain inside. And he was like, nope. He got me a Safe P bond so I could be at home with my baby. And I'll never forget whenever they called. Alyssa was right at 4 months old. She was very attached to her mama. And I remember hearing her say mama whenever I had, it's almost like she knew. It's almost like she knew that I was about to be gone, because whenever I handed her to my grandmother or my adopted mom, mama.
Mhm.
And I had to go and hear the door shut, and I was gone for 8 months. And here's the sad thing is, right then I knew that I wanted to be done. Right then I knew I wanted to be done. Not right then. I went through safety. I stayed in Dallas. I changed my whole life. And the minute I came back to Johnson County and got around old people, old places, old things, old demons. The Bible is very clear that bad, what does it say? Bad company can corrupt good character. It's in Proverbs, I believe. It is true. People will bring you the minute you come out and you're like, oh, I just want to show people how good I'm doing, whatever. No, it's a trap. I ended up 6 months later, I ended up with my last felony, 2.5 years in prison. I found God in such a tangible way that whenever I came out, I was on fire. I was on fire. I came out with the ankle monitor on parole. I started working at the Hampton Inn for $7 an hour, nights, days, whatever I could get. A year later, I became a gym manager. A year later, I became a gym manager and a roofing manager. Then a year later, I went to sales for American Steel Carports, and it has been elevated since then. I do sales and financing now, six figures, six figures. And I'm a woman. Women have to fight 3 times harder than any man to get the same pay, to get anything, um, except whenever God is on your side. I am truly an overcomer for putting God first.
You are. You are an overcomer, and I love that bad company can corrupt good character. I'm gonna find that because I'm gonna put that on my wall, and I'm gonna put your name next to it.
I believe it's in
Um,
Proverbs.
well, I'm sure I can just
Yeah.
Google it and I'll find it. You find anything that way.
Yeah.
But you know, you have you had every reason to lay on the floor and give up. You had more reason than anybody I've ever interviewed to lay on the floor. Well, I don't know. You got a good run. You got a good run with a couple of people I know, but you could have just laid on the floor and given up.
Yeah.
You could have just given in and you could have said, all this bad shit happened to me. So I'm just going to revel in all the bad shit and I'm just going to lay it down. Right. But you did it. You wake up every day and you choose God, you choose yourself, and you choose to be a survivor of what you went through so that you are in a position to help other people, other young men and women who have been through things that you can say, you can make it through this. The only way to the other side is through it, right? If I can get through this, you can get through this. Don't give up. And we don't understand why we feel like God leaves us, right? But it's not him leaving us, it's us leaving him because we don't feel worthy of his love.
It's because we're looking to fill this emptiness with everything that's tangible. Well, a lot of times God is not tangible. He doesn't feel tangible. He is always there, but we can't until we get to a certain point in our walk. And even then, there's sometimes where I'm like, God, like I know you're here, but where are you? Because I don't feel the Holy Spirit close to me. I don't feel it. It is because us as humans, we are so programmed for instant gratification. We need something tangible. Like if I'm not touching this, it's not here. It's right. It's over here.
Or if I'm not high
Yeah.
or euphoric
Yep.
feeling, I'm not feeling
Well, because
anything.
that's an instant gratification. We need to feel something.
Exactly.
We need to feel something instead of just learning to just be. We have to trust. Whenever you learn to trust that God is always there and He's always in control, instead of being stuck on a feeling, it's a fact. People need to learn how to operate on facts and not feelings. And with the minute you learn that in all things, the fact is, this is here. I don't feel it because it's not touching me. I don't feel it. I don't have any instant gratification until I pick it up and put it in my hands and I can feel it. But the facts are, it's still there. The minute
What is that? Now I'm
oh,
curious. What are
that's
you
my
holding?
my carpet cleaner, it just happened to be right here.
Wait, what is that, Chris?
It's my brush, girl. It just
I
happened to
love
be
it.
right here.
I love it.
But I mean, that's
Love it. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Is like you're still here and you're still smiling and you're still, and that's just Jesus,
It,
right? I mean,
it,
that's it. It's it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling, but it takes a really long time to get there. And what people don't realize is there's not a lot of people that find that relationship with God when they're young. They haven't been through it, right? They haven't been through stuff. And there's some people that don't have to go through stuff and they do find that easy relationship with God. I have a friend of mine and she's like, I don't know how you ever lived through what you lived through because nothing I had a picture perfect childhood. My parents were married, they were never divorced, and nothing bad ever happened to me. I was never bullied. I was never, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm like, but what kind of then I just want to ask, like, that's great, but what kind of character did that build for you, right? Like that
kind of depth.
so yeah, yeah, exactly. And I don't mean that
No.
derogatory in any way. It's just like, it's like, I mean, I'm glad that you went through that, but I'm glad that I went through what I went through because I'm a badass bitch now. You know what I'm saying?
And whenever people
Like,
talk to me, I can understand things that most people can't. Like you can talk to me about anything, and I don't judge you. I'm like, oh, sister, I've been there. Like it's fine.
yeah,
I
yeah,
can help. But that's what God told me a long time ago, Crystal. There's going to be purpose in your pain. Take that, and I feel like that's the same way with you. Like people can talk to you about things that they would never be able to talk to someone who hasn't been through anything. They're going to feel judged. They're going to feel defensive. They're going to feel they're not. You can
right.
reach people that nobody else can. Same here, and same with everyone out there.
My husband's like, why do people tell, like, I'll talk to somebody. He's like, why do people tell you stuff like that? And I was like, because, it depends on the person. To some people, like I talked about a couple of times ago on my podcast, that like I have rest. People think I'm very intimidating. I'm very unapproachable,
Yeah.
and my confidence is misconstrued as arrogance, and I'm not
Mm-mm.
arrogant, but I'm confident in who I am. I am God's child,
Mhm. And I think also
and
I have firm boundaries. People know that I'm not the one like
yes,
you. I, a lot of people don't even come towards me because I make my boundaries very, very apparent. Like, hey, this is what I will and this is what I won't allow. I'm perfectly fine with being alone. I'm a single. I'm 38 years old, about to be 38 years old. I'm still single and I'm perfectly fine with it because, baby, if you don't talk to God more than you talk to me, you're not coming to me. You're not.
right,
So,
right. I had convinced myself when I was 34 ish, 30, well, 32, that I was good. I was just going to be a single mom for a long time, and I'm good with that. I'm okay with being by myself. I've accepted it. And then, like 5 months later, God brought Danny into my life, and I was like, "Oh my God, this dude is way too nice. I'm going to run all over him like a doormat." Right? And then he like one of the first times we met, because we met on Match, and one of the first times we met it on the border for lunch, and I drove out of the parking lot when we were leaving, and he called me. He's like, "You wanted me to kiss you, didn't you?" I was like, "Yeah, actually, like, right, little confident, like," and I'm like,
okay.
okay, I'm listening. You have my attention,
Mhm.
right?" And then the first time he came over to my house, which was a couple of days later, he walked up and he goes, "Hey," and he goes, "Hi," and I said, "Hi," and it was just like he can like bring the calm to me sometimes, most of the time. And he's like, "Look, we're just going to get this over with real quick." And he put me up against a wall and kissed me. And I was like, this dude has some balls.
Hey, be the
Okay.
man. Be the man because I'm
Oh,
ready to be the female.
yes. Yeah, 100%. Because I've had to be in control all
Yes.
my life for so long that I just wanted someone else to come and not take the control, but just
Let me
take
trust
that
you.
burden off of
You
me.
know, yes.
Yes.
Like people talk about this masculine and feminine energy. Like, do you think that we want to carry this weight? Because us as women, we were made to be the helper. we don't want to carry this. Now we will, but I
Uh-huh.
don't want to. As soon as
Right.
someone comes in and shows me that I can trust you to lead the way that God calls you to lead, baby, look here, have it all. I'm done.
One of the things that I read was something along the lines of when you when you trust someone enough to give them all your broken pieces and knowing that they won't mistreat them. Do you know, like it was something like that? Like when you, I'll have to find it and send it to you. But
Yeah.
I mean, it was so good. So I know we're at like 45, 50 minutes at this point. So I need to shut it down. But listen, you're incredible. And if you have one piece of advice to leave with someone who is struggling, who's looking for hope, who's looking for a way out, whatever it may be, like what is your, like my thing that I tell people all the time is um everything you do affects everyone around you in one way or another. Sin splatters. That's the one that Holly says all the time, is sin splatters. So what is your piece of advice that you would give to someone that you can leave someone with here today?
My piece of advice is that anytime that you are not feeling okay with whatever you're going through and you're looking to feel better, you hit your knees. You hit your knees and you pray and you pray and you pray. Because the minute you put you go to a substance, whether it's alcohol, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's sex, whether it's food, whether it's anything else, you're picking up an addiction. You're choosing instant gratification. If you will have a little bit of patience and pray, even whenever it doesn't feel like you're hearing anything back, and whenever you do, whenever you hear that audible, that
Mm,
tangible feeling, that voice, that right there will change your entire life because God will show up and He will show out and He won't stop.
mm,
It is not always, I think that my biggest thing is that everybody, the world that we live in, they want instant gratification. I need to see something now. I need to feel something now. I need to change something now. If you will learn to wait in the uncomfortable, unknowing part, if you can learn to just be okay with not knowing and trusting, your life will change so dramatically. So,
mm. Learn to have I'm writing a note right now. I have so many sticky notes all over my desk from this. Learn to have patience through the uncomfortable.
yeah, our mind
That's
starts to,
huge.
because if you ever read, I tell everybody that I talk to, Battlefield of the Mind by Joyce Myers. I read it every 6 months. You know why? Because I get a little bit deeper and I grow a little bit more and I pull something out of it. But whenever you learn that your mind is literally the battlefield between good and evil, that is where Satan attacks your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, everything. If he can plant a seed, says, you're not worthy, then in your quiet time, that's the devil's playground. He's going to start making it grow. Oh, you're not worthy because of this. You're not worthy of this. Well, somebody said this. It's all of a sudden it keeps growing. If you can learn to be okay in that uncomfortable, quiet, not knowing part and stand on God's word, well, God says I'm perfectly and wonderfully made. He says that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according. He says that He has plans for me for good and a hope and a purpose. If you can learn to plant those good things and just be okay. Just be okay in the uncomfortableness. It'll change your whole life.
Man, amen to that, sister. OMG. Oh, got chills. I love it. All right. So with that, guys, we're going to leave you to it. I hope you enjoyed this. Crystal, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
being here. Thank you for sharing this. This is freaking incredible good stuff. And Oh man, you guys can catch us on Allison Unfiltered on YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's everywhere. So please be sure, if this moved you and motivated you, please be sure to like it, subscribe to it, share it. Please share it, because the more it gets out there, the more people it can help that need to hear this message, because this is some good stuff, girl. Thank you very much.
That's
All
awesome.
right. Peace out, homies. We'll see y'all later.